Well, I should probably shut off lights behind me. Make a difference. Getting through the fear of God like a pearl buried, a ticket waiting, a home prepared. I suppose I should finish a little more about the actual word pearl, but that it was a lamb, and that the only thing worthy, the path created for our redemption, that death won't be allowed, that lamb had to die, and God providing that himself, as himself, as if something in heaven that died, and we know God walked away first, but that nothing else that he created to dwell as a heavenly being had flesh. But it had flesh if it came to this place as an option. And we see that through Jesus, that option and that gate, that way, that lamb is a door that actual flesh could actually be manifest there. That we will have no needs. The physical world where it's spoken into being. And for us, I like the idea that where we hear, and that when that lamb died, there's somewhat of everywhereness. And this is just speculative, my own imagination, just things that make me happy contemplating and build the assuredness of a pearl. But that to step into that gate, we have no power to do. It's been guarded, and the guards are being done away with, and we have an entrance only one way, or staying on the outside of things that do get destroyed, that don't create. So that it was a lamb. And we see that, in play out in the religious system. But the pearl, and the biggest key, and this wisdom is an access to wisdom that the fear of the Lord, that's where wisdom comes from. And yet then to correct and follow that. So the Lamb has really given us ears to hear, and this connection with that, something from that Lamb was given to us in our spirit before we became flesh. And those are your ears to hear. And when you hear what you really are, and you have a good mind to use common sense to figure out what you and where you and how you down here in this reality really are, at the same time, you get ears to hear, and wisdom is the beginning of it, is the fear of the Lord, and using it and making the right decision, the understanding of all these implications of such great wisdoms in this faith. Fear is actually a strength and a faith, and it's a reverence, and even a countenance like a necklace, the assuredness, and even you get that strength in yourself, and whether it's your spirit, in your soul, your will can be so strong it touches with your adrenaline. to accomplish great things beyond what you can. And I have been gifted with that so many times just for the love of my family and my kids, and able to do things physically I couldn't do and break bones. And it doesn't matter yet. Not until that love's complete, or that task. But that comes out of Job. And the biggest reason, and right where that we were reading the first time, and you'll find that repeated, that, in order to understand, because things are going to go like you said they go, and they're going to type like they say, and we just get to decide which way we're going to fall on. And prophecy, that sureness of knowing what's going to happen, is with God, and no other had more than Jesus of that to understand. And yet he didn't know the exact day, because there's a filling and a restraint that comes by those of us who have woken those ears, that have received a testimony in their spirit, communicating with the Holy Spirit, which is a down payment, an earnest, a deposit that proves to you this is your ticket and you can't even lose it. It's in your spirit when you've had that Holy Spirit communication. And so many have died and seen. And myself saw the flowers there, and how that as they were just being appreciated by me, they would turn to every little detail that was impressing me at the time as just a perfection, there for me being more beautiful because they were beautiful. So a coordination, and when you have such assuredness, I think you have to get right down to attacks of the counterfeit that wants to attack anything like that. You can be sure it's an unstudied, undepth, unrelating. But in order to wake that up, you have to feed it. And we don't have anything else but this word. And we don't teach it in school anymore. Whatever we were founded on, whichever direction we were going, now it can just be said and assumed we're going that direction, and we're not. So use the word, read it through until you're familiar enough on, because it's embarrassing, it's awkward. The only time you're going to open it up in is for, that particular Bible study. You're not going to learn to find the things you're asking and that you're needing. And a concordance is a gift for that. And then when you're familiar with it, the testimony of Jesus is prophecy. So you begin, and it's as simple as these little symbols to understand, because you don't want your feet to slide because somebody wants to come up and push you, and make you feel like they know more than you. And nobody knows what the Holy Spirit met in you and your relationship with it, and no one can take that away. And you cannot lose that strength during these times. There's only two things we're talked about: unforgivable, and the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit is not taught enough, and along with the mark. And even the worship of the mark, everybody wants to argue that. Well, I'm here to tell you, I loved a movie I just saw. I guess it's been around a little while, not that long. What was that called? Chaos Walking. The men of this planet, they crashed on the environment, caused a vapor, rainbow vapor, to be visible around them, as if a vapor coming up off of them, that this aura was visible, but that it made a noise. It was perceptible to everyone around them, and even in the ability to manifest more quickly, yet just imagery. So a psychic component that it could be related to, but that every doubt that a person had. Very interesting movie, being that this technology we're in. And one of the lines in the movie was that the preacher in it could not tell God from the noise, because this phenomenon going on in the movie, but the phenomena is right here in secret, part of our 5G mental health and social justice and behavioral health. It's automatically in a way that the original use and your original, what you go to biblically for a definition of blasphemy and profanity, is those men of names and renaming God, renaming, just the cookie cutter for the counterfeit in all these cult sorts of things. I discussed with my sister. She had a question about Scientology, and we were talking about, being clear, and then how L. Ron Hubbard died with all these attachments, or he didn't die, I'm sorry, excuse me, that he nearly killed himself because they didn't really have any way to get around them. We cannot discipline and work our way there. And they would do these confessions, and of course they blackmail and keep, and you have to make money for the church. And so the very basics of the pattern, just, in cookie cutter form these cults, but that there are spiritual significances. Now, this is the guy that forms the whole head of the cult, and he sets the whole place on fire and locks himself in his room because he's got so much attached to him that he decides, since they can measure it the way that they do, you hold two posts and there's a meter in between that picks up on this bioelectric energy, and it's unstable when you maybe it generates more. I don't know how they read it, but once you make the connection, if you lie or you're uncomfortable and resistant to something in the conversation, then they're asking you about sin. They're asking you about, had you ever stolen? And moral questions. And to throw someone in a moral dilemma, the fear of the Lord. But once you have found it, once you have stuck and everything is anchored to Him, which He came out of the Word, and you're not going to be able to anchor any firm thing or keep your feet still if you don't get familiar with the pages. And I'm sorry, assuming that churches did that, left me talking to people that had no idea what I was talking about, which I've been out of church so long. I just have to say that with everything on TV and such brilliant teachers, I'm just awestruck. I just have no concept of how people became to be so in the dark. And this is one of the biggest signs of the time. And the thing, knowledge, that will get you through tribulation. And the reason that it happens so fast and so completely is there's a loss of knowledge. And but you need what's in yourself, and to know that it can't be taken. But that to live and promote yourself, you're going to save flesh. But if you don't save the flesh, if you don't work with those disciplines, well, can you just, I'm going to have adrenaline? Same way with the spirit. But what you have to keep the phone line in maintenance, and that is what happened with that lamb. This physical existence of giving itself as a ransom for everything that everybody that ever would be, and part of the human design, and that came down here. So you have ears inside you, that when God promises to Himself, it has to go through you. And it's that sure. This is His word. You don't have to doubt, did that really happen? Was I just dreaming? Was this new technology? and right now they are faking it. This is a war where they 20 years ago told us this is what they were going to do, is make a religious fake, and get rid of terrorism, and make them see Allah, make them see a skeleton, make them hear things. And we have that technology. And if you believe it and you follow it and you seek to it, well, what are you supposed to do with God? And if you're doing that, why are we going to sit back and say, well, you have to worship, the mark, and you have to worship? You better get a little bit deeper into not only what's going on today, because they poo-poo you right out of this secret knowledge. And the secret knowledge has spiritual guards, the gates of heaven, and you have a reflecting pool, and what goes out comes right back at you. And they do that now with your own mind in your spirit, and they can insert themselves to what you thought in an untimely way. And this is going to be no religion allowed except. And so you're going to be naming or profaning something that's not God by God's name. And that is profanity, and that is blasphemy. And does it say God because they pretend to be God? No, he knew what was going to happen. Blasphemy of the Holy Spirit in the temple, that through Christ we came to understand what he was looking for. He didn't want a king back then, but we're going to be living in governments down here. And not that it was such a horrible sin that they did it anyway, but these are examples, that they did do it, help civilization, and it was a way of security. And as these frauds are a way of security, that we're not going to die in heaven. And that flesh is possible, and to move in and out of heaven, just phenomenal things that no one can take away from you when you've gotten it out of this book. And to find those words and look them up when you become familiar with it, and kind of going on anyway of this thing, but to understand, and the Holy Spirit gives us that, doesn't it? And so the more understanding that you can show the way you live down here and listen to wisdom and use those ears and not have to go through the mistakes, but you have to really have the fierceness that fear turns into, just to be kind enough to say, no, thank you. And to say no to the group, and not listen, know the difference when you're hearing someone with rationalizations trying to tell you to get barcoded material put in your body, and they can't see that. They can only see this short little application right here. And, no, they've done let the cat out of the bag, had a big cashless celebration and going right on with it. And every meeting keeps coming up. Well, what are people going to do for jobs? Well, we don't know. Well, we'll just keep going. That's our leaders in the dark of the entire new industrial revolution. So the pearls at this gate, and you get a reflecting pool, but the wisdom is with God, and that being sensitive to the things he wants you sensitive to, allow you to make choices that don't attract the wrong invisible beings. And you can be sure that there are. But the best way to look at this, we have horrible phenomena go on when it's all about that. It was nothing that Jesus didn't even have to speak to, but he did, to teach us about the spiritual beings and where we go when we're dead, and this lock of dead things that they, the fallen angels and spirits, are, when they're trapped down here, so involved in negative things that they can't escape. And for a Christian, you don't have to worry about that. When you trust, when you are sealed by God's Holy Spirit, um, don't leave yourself to having to take so much by faith. Have enough faith to know it's right, that you're going to find it, and here and there, you find a little more corrections, because every misunderstanding, that's all you hear now, about misinformation. But this is how cults, Scientology, and the cookie cutter pattern happen. And as I was going to talk about pearls, and part of this, and I really think, the way that a lot of, you read through the concordance, you find over and over, probably because it was mistaken for this other word right there in the definitions, when they lose prime roots and whatnot. One of the things that you could run across when you are double checking yourself for errors on the numbers is that this knowledge also had not only interpretation, and an interpretation that teaches you knowledge. Like, I could teach you the numbers, but you see the numbers and suddenly you could count whatever. But there is a knowing in just passing through, and when his kingdom comes down here and the whole world passes through the knowledge of God everywhere. And so we're like that when the breach of death that is now separating us, and that Lamb has control over, as Christ and the Holy Spirit connection. So, we shouldn't worry about things that are dead and died, because he died. And anything in that spiritual realm, the Lamb is the only one worthy that still can control or have that duality in heaven, for these seals that allow things to come forth, break forth, for the Holy Spirit to tell us, so that the Spirit can move people together as a whole. I just hated, especially, like I said, my grandson, to leave without going through on a pearl, because I knew that I had not gotten to the fear of the Lord. When we love people that teach us and that have authority over us, and in our basic definition of love with our family, in a child, and him loving you back, the child wants to perform the way that your example is, and do what you do, and make you happy. And when our animals do it, when they have that intuition of doing the right thing, well, that's the fear of the Lord. And it's love, and through him it is. So the Holy Spirit has dominion over all these other things, and yet there's not too many that are going to get out there and they'll get a Ouija board and they'll operate in the Spirit that way. And times are upon us where that's being sent against you. And if they do truly want to put on, as much like the Ring of Solomon, and they wouldn't a ring didn't show up, but this judgment cape that this guy in Nigeria has, the judgment, and you see it in anything mythical and these other religions of ancient history, with the especially Cthulhu or the tentacle, but all those inferior things that do curse, so that it's control over, and that these things get sent to you. But that to know that there's, you're not going to be worthy, and he is, and you can trust that he is. And you're only going to find that in the word if you look beneath. It's been translated again. But one of those meanings that it could have been confused with was recite. And this did need to be taught and always was taught in a way that your spelling and counting is revealed to a child. And that can be knocked out of you. You know, you memorize verses as a child and things like that, and suddenly maybe it didn't. You know, you find out there's a whole lot more of internal and spiritual knowledge that can come up along with that. But this, whenever, and the first thing, because it is the one argued in Timothy that I pulled up, even in that mention, the modesty of the clothing of a woman, and the exterior. I tried to put in that little discussion, that exterior quality. And so you can't really even overlook the implication of these words in that simple usage of a woman, female behavior. But even if a female is used, you aren't talking also things that, are so true, that they're true on all three levels and here on earth as a fourth, of that of pearls. You wouldn't sell it, you would bury it, because it is your ticket in, knowing these things, being receptive and turning your ears on. But seek ye first. You get in here and you look, and the pearl is a very quick study. I wanted to read from that, but I don't want to bore. I'll say where it is. Like I said, there's not that many verses. Job 28:18. Matthew 13:46. Revelation 17:4. 18:12 and 16. Revelation 21:21. And Matthew 7:6 and 13:45 and 46, the pearl. So very few things to look up, but as you look up these words and you see that really the pearl's only a pearl, I think, once. So that you understand the usage of these things, and the chaff over the seed, even if that's being described, is it for food or planting? And you'll hear it taught like it's being planted, and you kindly have to bring people back around in the application of what the word says. They were making food. They were threshing for food. But you do thresh for seeds. You need the kernel in the seed. But manna from heaven, and you're only going to get it off the pages. Well, not only off the pages, but during these times, it cannot be stressed enough. There's two things unforgivable: the mark, working it, the work of it, that's your right hand, working for it, and bent and bought up and following the cookie cutter philosophy of moral dignities, isolated to just the concrete world and death, where death rules. So you don't, just the superficial, you wouldn't want. Well, sweetie, I'm sure I should have said more then, but I've had a busy day too. And no, you are the most significant thing about the surest end of the world there is. And it's really wonderful. It's so peculiar. I heard today how depressing it must be. And I guess if you don't know and it confuses you, maybe it is. And, maybe your fear needs to turn a little more to peace. And if you keep following, he will send a dove to the window, and the Holy Spirit will come and testify. And then you still can't let them come and steal your crown. But yet it can't be done. When you're so weak, just keep standing, because that's when he's the strongest. That's when he's the strongest. So, way longer than it needed to be, and I just say, it's very few things to look up. Look up the Pearl just for the practice of looking up these words. And every time that it goes a few days too long that I'm at that end of Bible study, boy, double check everything as you go. You get it plotted out in a way that you can read your own different notes. Different versions of a word are always, when it's the difference between an oyster, a pearl oyster, and a frozen crystal pearl or pearl. The insight that gives you where it was mentioned every time it's mentioned after that. So get familiar and get to where you can look these things up. These are the times, and these are the methods that all our teachers have died, that had this kind of discipline and knowledge in prophecy. But you can be guaranteed that these loving lessons, just to know more about what a lamb is, are more revealing of how you will see it happening around you and know which part to go investigate in the world, and research and development, military, global, and all the different types of things. You don't have to look very far. He will basically give you something to confirm, and it's happening. So you'll find it, and you'll find it where it's at now in its development, and a little bit deeper, and you'll find out where it's at in its research and development. And that's kind of what keeps you going, a little interested to see this capability of barcoded invisible rays being talked to in every cell of your body. And we're there. This vaccine and patches are the only affordable way to go, and that's activated near infrared. And your phone ain't the only device you walk by, and it gets a signal way up there. So we're here, but we're in heaven too. We have to trust that door and that ticket, and it's coming home to claim it all. And if you haven't received the Holy Spirit, like I said, you can't fear not going and not want to find the way and to read any of it, whether you understand it or not. He will bring you in. He reveals all things. And the book, believe it or not, gets smaller. It's been smaller since the beginning, and Dan made idols, and the cookie cutter counterfeits really take over kingdoms, and he got the land he wanted real quick, and now it's the whole globe. So get in there and get to where you can recognize these attempts as they come at you, and get comfortable in a way that fights with these words, and they're a kindness and assuredness. And when it gets to the point that a lie is going to be brute forced down your throat, and that the external appearance and measures of wealth that don't last forever come upon us, that's when he takes over. And you can begin then, you just sympathize so much for anyone that could be so blind, and hold your own integrity. And they had to die, they had to be tortured, and yet the Holy Spirit was so much there. They had ecstasy in moments in singing. So it's more real than this world. This world is missing out on it, but it's in all of us. He came and ransomed every one of us that would ever be in that Lamb. So, Logan, then he says bye. And everyone else, just remember how significant the joy of fierce joy. Yeah, you're significant, and don't ever think different. The most significant thing in God's eye